Okay. We are now recording. Good afternoon, game artist and screen artist, class of 2018. I had to remember numbers for a second.
They don't exist.
Hi. Okay, so today, like I mentioned earlier, will be a joint lecture for everybody concerning UV unwrapping and some of the newer tools in Maya 2017, which are fantastic and throws roadkill out the window. So if anybody was curious about how do we UV unwrap with no roadkill, without sort of that crutch, this will be how we do it. I'll try not to take too long for the lecture. It might take a half an hour to an hour. Afterwards, Adam should be giving you guys a lecture, specifically on some VFX stuff. My game artist will be working for the rest of the day. Tomorrow, my game artist all day, back to schedule, hopefully. And a couple things I want to go over, talking about maybe animated textures and a few other things. So, coming back to it, I will be recording this lecture, and every now and then I'll record a lecture and save it out in a discussion thread in Canvas. Screen artists, I will talk to Adam about if you guys want the Substance Painter and Designer tutorials from last week, or the videos that I created from last week. I can have him post it on his own thread in the screen discussion threads. I don't have access to those, unfortunately. Sad face, I know. But I did talk to our head of faculty. He might be using my videos as part of like the AIE videos button for a subject. So I know. It felt pretty good, but anyway. Huh? Australia famous, I guess.
What better place, honestly.
Yeah. I'm mesmerized by his voice. Okay, so speaking of the excuse me, can't speak. The discussion threads for game artists specifically. Right now, if you need to refer back to an important discussion or a video where I posted the video itself, if you go to, in this case, game environments, whatever subject that you are currently enrolled in and working on, it'll be in that subject. If you scroll down, there's a lot of different threads, but it should be a pinned discussion for game environments is where we'll post our work in progress images, and probably tomorrow or Wednesday we'll actually post another image of our current progress, and we'll do our weekly reviews as per usual, trying to get back on track. But also there is a thread for game environments recorded lectures. So if you click on that, I've posted links to these unlisted YouTube videos where I put together Substance Painter Part 1, Substance Painter Part 2. So Part 1 is going over the Rune Glaive. Part 2 is going over the sci-fi pillar, the stuff that we walked through all together last week, as well as a video for Substance Designer, creating that metal plate with the rusted metal. That's that video. Okay. Now, the fun part, UVing, right? No, UVing isn't fun. But they've made it a bit easier to work for UV unwrapping. So, UV unwrapping, if you guys remember, is the 2D representation of our 3D model flattened out. It's taking let's say a banana, like we have here, cutting a seam and then flattening it out in 2D space. It's like paper origami. You take a piece of paper, you crumple it up, and then you unfold it again. You flatten it out on 2D space. Because you're trying to be able to paint back onto that 3D surface, so we need a 2D representation of that. So again, if all the UVs look like this, we need to flatten it back out so we can actually write on it. Okay? But different types of objects need different types of UV unwrapping techniques applied to it. Here I've provided several examples how we might use different options. So planar mapping, cylindrical mapping, and then our 3D cut and sew UV tool, which is the roadkill button, basically. Not exactly roadkill, but it is pretty darn close. So, starting off, what might I do for my artist soup? Cylindrical map on certain things. So again, you don't want to just do it over the entire model. You want to select certain components and apply certain mapping to it. So in this case, I have this part of the cylinder. I'm going to cut and kind of unwrap by using the cylindrical map. So if I go ahead and select, this is the good UVs, bad UVs. So good UVs means that all of our tiny little squares are in scale to one another and things are properly laid out in our UV shell. So I have our soup, our cylindrical map, condensed. It was the condensed Donald's artist soup with the top and the bottom, which is a scanned ravioli can. So, so not exactly a soup can, but you know, when did it expire? Wow, in April. So don't eat this. Okay. So looking at our UV layout, we can turn on our checker map. So remember how we used to make a whole separate Lambert material with a checkerboard pattern on it? Guess what? There's the easy button now. There's the checkerboard button to see if there's any UV stretching or distortion over our 3D model. And it's also visible in our 3D view. So I rotate around and I can see if I need to scale up or down any UV shells. So selecting this, it's terrible because I actually just did a planar map on it from like X or Z, and I just kind of reset my UVs. So if I look at it right now, here, so it just kind of has this planar map all over everything. It is incorrect. Why? Why is that? Why is it incorrect? Yes.
Because you can't see all the faces properly. You can't see the outside of the can.
Exactly. All of the outside of the can is along here, but it's not actually laid out for me to paint on. So I can't put my nice artist soup texture on top of it. It'll be kind of lost in that 2D space, that kind of gap in between right here. So what I'm going to need to do is, of course, using our face, selecting our cylinder here, selecting this cylinder here, and then if I hold down Shift, select one face, Shift, select the other, and then double click the next one, I can select an entire ring of cylinders all around, or a loop. Yes, you have to hold Shift whenever you double click. Otherwise, it'll just try to select the entire object. If I hold down Shift, double click, Shift, double click, Shift, double click. And that adds a selection all around. And if I wanted to do the same thing but deselect faces, hold down Control, double click, and I can remove a ring. So Shift is to add, Control is to remove. Yep. Control Z. This isn't Australia. Get out of here. Okay. That is not right. That is not what I want. Okay, so I need a cylindrical map. So UV, cylindrical. Click on it. I'm not going to do options. If I check UV, there we go. I can turn on my checkerboard pattern here. I can see if I have any UV distortion. They're a little wide, so I might scale them in, or scale them out actually. And then move them over. Notice that it kind of highlights the kind of shells or these 0, 1 areas, these as you're moving along, it's kind of moving from different quadrants. So what's the most important square on here? The 1, 1 space, this, where the circle is in right now. This is where your UVs technically exist for texture mapping. It doesn't really exist anywhere else because it's repeating the UVs in these areas. Now, while I'm kind of working on it, my workflow is I kind of move stuff off to the side, and then I'll condense it back down later into this 0, 1 space. So, again, what?
What would happen if you didn't condense it down, if you just left UVs off to the side and tried implementing it in like Unreal?
Then it wouldn't look right. Well, okay, so if you had something that used a tiling texture and you scaled up your UVs like so, if that's all you were doing, that's okay. Because it's repeating texture, it's going to repeat based on how much you scale this thing. Normally, for anything that you want to, like an individual object like the Runeglaive, you want to contain it within this 0, 1 space. And if you have any mirroring components, anything that does need a repeat, such as the half of the blade, you select those halves of the UVs, and then you offset it by value of 1. Or in this case, it's not offset, it is actually translate. If I do this, transform, move, value of 1, left, right, up, or down.
So it's just for consistency's sake?
Yes. Or this is where the texture will actually bake in most programs.
Okay.
Yeah. So in Substance Painter, this is the recognized area. But whenever you start to scale up and animate UVs, that's where you'd have stuff kind of existing outside of that 0, 1 space. But it's technically repeating. It's you guys, have I used this example before? If you're playing the original Mario Brothers, not Super Mario Brothers, but the one where it's Mario and Luigi with the pipes and the crabs and stuff. If you run from one side of the screen to the other, like if you run on the right side of the screen and then you come out on the left side, that's what it's doing. It's kind of repeating that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it would still work in a lot of cases, but just for purposes of baking.
Yeah.
Programs.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Again, I would select the edges, or faces here. I would do another cylindrical map, and I would scale these down appropriately, however needed. So in this case, I need my UV editor, and notice that they are the same scale as the base, as this. That is incorrect. Why is that? I'll show you why it's incorrect. Because 1, our UVs are distorted; they are no longer squares, and 2, they're itty bitty, meaning that they have more detail resolution than the mesh allows, or the mesh should have. Why did it break off again? I hate that. Anyway, so what we need to do is put it closer to the proper scale that it needs to be. So I'm scaling it down, moving it over, and scaling it generally up to where the appropriate size. So that way, whenever I mouse over and check it out, these are more appropriate in scaling compared to this area here. Now, they're still a little distorted. They're still a little squished. So I'm going to scale them back up. Okay. But this is pretty basic. You guys understand this. This is the idea behind UVing. Same idea if I go to using our planar map and moving and sewing UVs back together. So if I were to try to make this one continuous edge along here at our book, notice that our UVs are currently... Oh, I already fixed this one. Dang it. That's fine. It won't normally come out like this. It'll do a separate planar map for each side, and they'll kind of be split off. So if you want to split UVs, if we want to split off our UVs, so these are welded together, I want to cut them. I can go under my tools, or cut and sew, and I'm going to cut these UVs. I'm selecting this edge. Cut and sew cut. It's also down here under our cut and sew options. So if I can select my UV shell and now move it over. Okay, this is what you would want to do to break stuff away. If you want to weld it back together, I can select a UV edge, and notice how it highlights whichever edges are supposed to be connected. In this case, this is the hardcover of this book. So I want to kind of weld it all back together, so that way, if I am painting between these three shells, it is all continuous, and I don't have to worry about, okay, I'm doing a UV shell over here, and it's rotated, and I have to like compensate in Photoshop or whatever other software. I can make it continuous and not have any breaks in my texture. So to fix that, if we try to use our sew tool, or weld or sew, or from our cut and sew options, it'll sew them back together. But what's one of the issues? If I just press this button and pray, it will stretch. Oops. It will stretch it out. Notice that in comparison before, we had our nice organized checkerboard pattern on everything, but now if I try it again and sew it back together, it has stretched things out because it's trying to scale the UVs in that direction, weld them back together. It's not moving the shells. So what we want to do is an option called move and sew UV edges. So I'm actually going to take them and weld them. It's select the edges, and it'll magnetically kind of connect them back together. Opposites attract. It's going to snap them together like that. So I'm going to undo, and I'm going to select those edges again. It's kind of difficult to see, but so what I can do now is under our cut and sew options, they have an option called move and sew. Move and sew is very important. If you click on it, it will do exactly that. Move it and then sew them together. And I can do the same over here. Select these edges, cut and sew, move and sew, click on it, and it puts it back together. And now it's one continuous UV shell. I can then just move over. Pretty cool. Okay. So now we'll come back to this glass in a second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select our banana. We have our banana. Actually, we'll use this banana. And this is the bad UVs, right? I just kind of planar mapped on top, and yeah, that's what it looks like. All right. So, so if you guys would pay attention at this point, making sure I'm not losing some people, this is the real bread and butter of the lesson. I'm thinking about food for some reason, so this is an organic model. Normally you guys would use roadkill. You wouldn't try to actually cylindrical map this. You wouldn't planar map it. It's not going to give you what you want. You'll have a lot better luck using a more organic UVing tool. Unfortunately, I'm putting a ban on roadkill if we can help it. We're going to use newer tools in Maya. In this case, it's the UV, under UV. It is the 3D Cut and Sew UV tool. So as long as you have not unticked that box on launch, this should be highlighted green near the very bottom. is called 3D Cut and Sew UV Tool. So any object we have selected, if we click on it, left click on it, it will now, allow us to cut and weld UVs in 3D space, much like roadkill. It's not going to automatically unfold them. We have to do that manually through another operation. But this will allow us to make cuts wherever we need a seam or weld it back together. So checking out our UV editor again. Nope. Actually, I don't want to. I need to set the color on. There we go. Right now, this is showing... Yeah. I believe this is going to show any... That's strange why it's different colors. Whenever I make a loop around... Oh, come on, man. We'll just edit delete by type history. We'll just do another planar map on it. Apply. There we go. What's happening? It should not be multicolors like this just yet. We'll deal with it. Alright, so UV, 3D Cut and Sew UV tool. Okay, now it's purple. Good. This is what I want. So to create a cut in our geometry, we will left click and drag and make a cut. Notice that anywhere I've made a cut, it now creates a new shell. So this is a new shell, this is a new shell, and they are different colors. For very visual sake, it makes it much easier to comprehend what's happening. The highlighted white edges are any cuts. If we hold down Control and left click and drag, it'll weld things back together. It works if in ZBrush you've turned on lazy mouse. It unfortunately works kind of like that. There are ways to fix it in the options, but that's generally how it works. Now, if you want to select an entire loop, if we double click, it will select an entire loop and then cut it. So if we were trying to cut our banana in half, there we go. If we hold down Control and double click, it will weld it back together. So doing that, I'm going to make a cut on the back of the banana to kind of open it up from the back and hide the seam along the back edge, because in case my banana is visible more from the top or from this angle, I can hide the seam. Again, the goal is to hide the seam. Name of the game. And then if we look at it in our editor, in our UV editor, in our object mode, our nanner is still incorrect. It did not do the nice, cool thing that Roadkill does and automatically unfolds it. However, there is an unfold option down here. Under Cut and Sew in our UV toolkit, if you do not have UV toolkit on the sidebar here, go under Tools, Show or Hide UV toolkit at the very top. Should be highlighted in green, but that's where that will be displayed here on the side. So it kind of looks like our modeling toolkit or extra tools for like quad draw and stuff, and our, you know. But here it's strictly for UVs in one nice condensed form. So I'm going to unfold them. So under our Cut and Sew options, unfold our UVs. And it has properly unfolded. Now it will give you an arbitrary scale between your different shells, and they will be inconsistent. So if I like make another cut in my banana, okay, and then unfold it again. Okay, well in that case it did. Usually it's something like this. It might unfold them on itself, and it might do something like this. Usually. So you have to go in and fix those UV shells generally a bit manually. Let's say I wanted to kind of rotate this. I want to align this. Or, let's see. Let me make sure it works first before I tell you that it does. Ew, never mind, don't do that. Nope. So let's say I wanted to make sure this works. Okay. All right. Nope. Green UVs. Okay. I didn't select this. Okay, let's say I wanted to straighten out my UVs. That I don't want my banana to have this weird kind of dip in it overall. I wanted them to actually kind of line up to a line on our grid or on our UV layout. So the way I do that is I'm not going to do it on over the whole object or the whole UV shell, because as we can see, that did not work under our straighten UVs. It just tries to geometrically straighten them all out compared to each other, and it's very inorganic. The way to fix this is we are going to select our UVs. In this case, I'm going to select this bottom row here. And then if I straighten out my UVs, it'll then straighten out that entire row of UVs. So if we want a very geometric machine cut banana, that's how we would do it. Let me try to see if this straighten UV shell works. Okay, let's do this. Yeah. Yeah. Huh? The resize tool? Like scaling up? You could. You could select the UVs here. You could scale it down like that as well. I'm trying to show you new stuff, man. But it's also really helpful if I have, let's say, a shell like this. If I go back to my book. Okay, so let's say I select my UV shell. I'm moving it over, and I rotated it kind of like this. This will not, rather than me trying to manually rotate and get this entire shell straight up and down and kind of hoping and praying, and I still can't get that angle right, guess what? Straighten UVs. Bam. That's pretty cool, right? And it doesn't really work for these 45-degree angles, or you have to change the amount here. I wouldn't change the amount. I would pre-rotate your shell first and then straighten your UVs. Because right now it's not going to do anything because it doesn't know what to do, which angle to kind of go in. So you kind of get it close to where it's supposed to go and then straighten your UVs. There it is. Just tell me it looks cool. Just lie to me. Thank you.
Wow.
Okay, too much lying. Okay. Okay. So again, it can work on organic shapes, but it can also work for inorganic shapes. So our wine glass here. So we're going to attempt to completely UV this using our 3D cut and sew UV tools. Don't worry, it goes much faster than it normally does. So if I UV 3D cut and sew UV tool, I notice that I have a cut here. So I want to add more cuts. So hold down Shift, double click. In this case, I'm going to double click down here, which I already did. Yay me. Click right here. Now you have to think about what it is where you want your cuts to be and what kind of mapping that it would be projecting. So if I know that a cylindrical map is comprised of, well, this is where the cuts would be on a cylindrical map. It would be along the top of the can, along the bottom of the can, and then down the length of it. So, with that in mind, I need 3 different cuts, usually. Top, bottom, lengthwise. For a planar map, I only need around the outer border edges of the thing I'm trying to planar map. So with those things in mind, I know where I want my cuts in my geometry. Back to our glass.
You almost said cake.
I'm having trouble. There's a lot of snot. I'm still kind of sick. So I'm going to click on that. Actually, I might do this one. There we go. This I want as a planar map here, so I want that by itself. Here I want a cylindrical, but right now I don't have one along the length for the cylindrical map. I'm actually going to try to apply one all the way down here. I'm going to try to follow along here. So there we go. On this one, this would be a... this one might be cylindrical, so let's go ahead and do that as well. And just to show you the wrong way, I'm going to make a cut right here. Normally you would not make a cut on something you want planar, but I'm going to show you how to fix that as well. So that's good. That's mostly good. And then that's pretty good as well. So now I'm ready to unfold. So under our UV editor again, going back to here, we're going to unfold our UVs. Ew.
Alright, great.
I missed a cut somewhere. Hold on. Cut, 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 cut. Should have more. Should have more shells. Should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different UV shells. Should is the key word here.
Maybe they're not all in the image.
Oh, actually, let me fix this. I'll add it. Select my edge. There you go. Oh, soften the edge. Mesh display, soften edge. There you go. Alright. Edit, delete by type history, just in case. And then I'm going to try to unfold it again. Okay.
Still doing it.
Yeah, kind of curious. So if you need to check out your UV shells in 3D space, you can right-click UV shell, and then select those different shells. Now, where are you?
I can still,
I'm seeing if it's super tiny right now.
Something's wrong.
Yeah, something messed up. So I'm going to try to redo this real quick with the planar map over the whole thing. Edit, delete by type history, and then try it again very quickly. We're getting there. We are, and don't call me Shirley. Anybody watch Airplane? Okay. See, back to where we were. Try it again. Unfold. That's better. For some reason, the other UVs that I had were kind of messing up the unfold operation. But a good first step if you are going to use this tool is just applying a planar map to our entire object first from either X or Z or whatever direction, and then using it. So, okay, so a couple things to note here, we have different shell sizes. This one's itty bitty. I don't know what exactly it is. Yep, itty bitty. Look at that.
It's the bottom of the glass.
Yeah. So again, to make sure my different sizes are correct, turn on my checkerboard pattern, and to just kind of generally scale these up and rotate them properly in 3D space. There. This one's a little big. This one's a little too big. This one's just about right, and then the bottom I don't really care about, but I will scale it up or down, depending.
There's no magical button that will scale them correctly.
There is. You can scale up or down here. There are tools to better scale. I've had a lot of trouble getting those to work properly, but you can like quickly just scale up or down UVs.
Like an auto scale? Like
Not quite an auto scale, unfortunately. It's let's see. Nope. Control sign. Nope. Scale up. It won't auto scale necessarily. But I think there are tools to better help with scaling. I prefer to do it a little bit more manually. There are tools to help organize our UVs after they have already been scaled. Right. So, okay, if we remember right, that these are incorrect. Which ones are incorrect? The rim here. If we go to our UV shell, where the hell is this rim? That did not actually map properly, it seems. So in this case, we'll probably use a combination of this tool and a planar map very quickly. UV planar from the top axis, from Y. And there we go. And we can scale that down appropriately and move it over. Yeah. But let's say something like this. I intentionally did this the wrong way to show you guys that you can select your edges here for your pizza pie, for the top of the glass on the bottom, and then move and sew UVs. Because otherwise, if you just try to use the sew tool, again, it's going to make it incorrect. You need to move and sew. And that should make it a more accurate planar map. So we do that all along for these edges as well. Maybe. Stitch together? Nope.
no like relax tool.
There is a sew tool, and then you can actually relax them.
Oh, that looks weird.
Yeah.
Looks perfect. Get some curve.
You can stack shells, randomize shells, align and snap, distribute. But there is a way to see UV distortion on our model. Notice that this is actually the other way around. Blue would normally mean good, and blue and white is good. Red is bad in terms of distortion. That's this icon up here. But there is a sewing tool. You can move and sew stuff together. There is a thing to normalize UVs. I believe that is one of the things. Let's select by the edge here. Okay. If I go to normalize, maybe. Nope. Never mind. There is a way to kind of relax UVs in here. I want to say it's like actually painting onto model, but if we need to, we can always just planar map it back down. But the other thing I wanted to show is this here. Since we have kind of a cylindrical map supposed to be happening. Supposed to be. This. Okay.
Are you sure it wouldn't be easier to do it more manually?
you can. Again, this is another way of doing it in conjunction with other stuff. So I can unfold or optimize straighten UVs. Nope. Straighten shell. Okay. That might not be great, actually.
So that's done. Can you just sew it together and re-unfold it?
I could. Let's try doing that. That's actually what I did. Thank you. I was like, I did this demo last night. So I can move and sew UV tool, move and sew, and then I can run my unfold operation again on this one UV shell to create something more like this. Thank you, Dana.
You're welcome.
Had a brain fart for a minute. There we go. I can do the same for this guy as well. Move and sew. And then select the shell. And then unfold again. There we go. So I'll do that for this guy too. Unfold. There you go. And I'm going to select this UV shell. I'm going to straighten the UVs out for it. And now I want to actually optimize them. I want to put them properly in the 0, 1 space here. So by default, the unfold, it's the layout. Okay, so if I have, let's say I have layout along is the edge here. So if I select my UV shell on my book again, if I'm moving them way over here, and I'm just kind of whatever, what I can do is I can actually reorient these, and if I have a lot of very small vertical pieces or horizontal pieces and I just want to put them all together in a single spot, what I can do is this option down here called layout along an axis. So right now I can lay out along the V direction, the U direction. Nope. It helps to actually have it kind of oriented somewhat correctly before you do it. Layout along the UV, and it'll actually reorient it. Now I'd probably want to straighten our UVs first and then run it. Something happened. Oh well.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to that face, but I can lay out along a certain axis. So what it's doing is it's kind of lining them up. If I have a lot of smaller pieces, and line everything up along an axis here. So it's trying to put them all next to each other along the U direction. U being horizontal like our X, V being vertical like our Y. Or yeah. Okay, undo all that. Okay. Okay, I say that layout because layout is one of the more important tools, and the last thing I'm going to show is taking our wine glass here. So by default, I don't think it works great, our layout options. I actually had to fix some stuff. So our unfold 3D options, and if you want to take some notes about what I did to get mine to work, was that I used, you have your unfold 3D method or your legacy method. So I'm assuming that Autodesk bought another tool that makes the layout option work better. So that's what unfold 3D is. I have my packing resolution. In this case, I'm setting to 2048 because I usually work at 2K. I have packing iterations 1. I can pack together non-overlapping UVs. If I have multiple setting for multiple objects, pack together non-overlapping. Pre-shell rotation, pre-shell pre-scaling I have turned off. And again, this is working with the idea, I don't know how yours is, so if someone actually has that up and can pull this window up, and I will cheat and look and see which ones are actually important to fix this option. So go to UV, go to Modify Layout Options. Down, up, and then go to the option box for it. Okay. So let me cheat real quick and look. Okay. 6. Okay. Aha. Okay. Okay. All right. So the only ones that really kind of matter or that are different is that I scaled up my packing resolution here. I changed my texture map size to 2K. And that's a drop-down menu. Making sure our padding units are set to pixels. And I'm padded out by 16 pixels outward. So that's the amount of space between my UV shells. So 16 pixels based on a 2K map gives us a good bit of breathing room. I'm setting it, shell distribution to distribute. That should be the default. Packing region full square, scale form uniform. If I hit apply, bam, it puts all of the shells together in our 0-1 space. And one other really cool thing that it does, so let me undo real quick. Notice that we have this ring here, which is our planar map of the top of the glass, right? So what this is doing is, whenever I go to the newer, this is a Maya 2017 thing. It didn't used to do this before. But it knows, it's smart enough to know that this is a hole and I don't have to butt up stuff against it. I can use this negative space here to put another smaller UV shell in here. Normally you do this manually, right? You can just say, oh, I know this shell is small enough, I can fit it in here, and that way I can be more optimal with my UV space. Well, our new layout option makes it so that it automatically understands what you're trying to do and puts that other shell in here. You may need to like move it around a little bit. It's probably too close to that edge, but it makes it all good and you don't have to do jack. But if I look at it, notice that, remember, I set that amount of padding here. Normally those UV shells are butt up against each other. And it's also butt up against the edges here. So what it does, it allows for a certain amount of pixel padding around it. Now, if you make your texture size smaller, that packing is going to be much more apparent between these shells. Or if you make your packing smaller, or your packing pixels amount smaller, then it won't have any space in between them. So, UVs. Yay. So, any kind of questions before I end this and let you guys work? No? You understand it completely, yes?
I understand it mostly.
All UVs forever and ever, and yeah.
Do we still have
Yeah, I'll be posting a video. I know you guys need to look at where the menus are again. Yes.
No question at this moment.
No questions at this moment until you actually try to do it and then it breaks, right?
Yeah.
That's when it gets confusing, is when it breaks.
Yeah, because everything I do is always perfect and reasonable, right? Nothing broke during this presentation. Okay, so that concludes the UVing lesson. You guys continue to work.